Welcome to the Seniors Flourish podcast, where it's all about helping occupational therapy practitioners working with older adults be the best they can be. And now your host, Mandy Chamberlain.
Welcome, everyone, to the Seniors Flourish podcast. My name is Mandy Chamberlain. I'm an occupational therapist, and I like to talk about everything having to do with occupational therapy and working with the older adult. So I am glad you are here. So today I am with my guest, Nichole Kain. She's an occupational therapist, an environmental gerontologist, a certified aging in place specialist, and we are going to be talking about cross-discipline collaboration. What does it look like? How do we do it? And how can we get better at it? And she's going to give us tons and tons of tips on how we can do this in our practice and in actually just kind of like in life. So welcome, Nichole.
Thank you, Mandy. I am so excited to be here. As a listener of your podcast, this is exceptionally thrilling for me to be with you today. So thank you.
You're going to make me blush. Oh, I'm excited you're here. I know I say it every time. I just get excited for guests. It's just so fun. And this topic is really fun because I think that's what we're doing. We are collaborating, and we're going to talk about collaboration. And let's just start with your occupational therapy journey. So what are you doing, or where did you come from? How did you get into OT? Let's just start there.
Sure. So, and funny story, this is one of the reasons I actually reached out to you. So after listening to your podcast for a while now, it was the episode that OT Miri interviewed you, and you talked about your OT journey and how you got here. And there were so many similarities. I was like, I just need to talk to this lady. I just need to talk to Mandy. And so you might hear some similarities to your story. So my OT journey was when I was in high school, I wanted to be a kindergarten teacher, and I come from a long line of educators, mostly public school, elementary, high school, but a long line of educators. And so I kind of assumed that I would always be a teacher, and I picked kindergarten because they get the best presents at Christmas time. I mean, there was really not much thought into it. And but growing up, I was really close to my paternal grandfather, and I called him my papa. And we did really everything together. We're kind of inseparable. And when I was in high school, he had a couple of TIAs, so a couple of mini strokes, and I would go with him to rehab. And his physical therapist, his wife was an occupational therapist, and I would drive my grandfather. And so I drove him to a session one time, and I came back to the house, and we come inside, and my parents are there. And I remember sitting on the couch next to my mom, and I mentioned occupational therapy, and she gave me a description of what OT was. And I wish I remembered what it was, but whatever it was that moment. Like, I remember the air in the room at the time. It was that moment that changed my mind. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And I switched. And so at that point I was still in high school. So I hadn't applied to any schools. There was still a lot of time to figure it out. And my mom was a guidance counselor at my high school, and she helped people with career choices. And so she was able to really help me hone in on what colleges were in my state. So I went to school, ended up getting accepted. I only applied to one school, and I ended up moving to that city before I even got my acceptance letter. I was just, I don't know. I just felt really confident, I guess.
That's exactly what if you listen to the episode, that's exactly what I did. I was like, oh yeah, I'm totally going to get it.
I'm totally going to get it.
And the ego of not even being in OT school. Like, that, come on. No, but I got into, so I don't know. They like me.
Yeah, I know. Thankfully. I was like, there was really no other option for me. Like, this was my path. And, so I moved, and then I thankfully got the acceptance letter, but that's how I ended up getting there. And actually, before I moved, so I ended up doing 2 years still at home for my associate's degree. So I graduated high school. I ended up staying at home for 2 years to do my associate degree because my grandfather was ill at that time, and I just wanted to be near him. And so he ended up passing away in my first year of my associate degree. And so I finished out, and then I moved over to Fort Myers, Florida. So I went to OT school at Florida Gulf Coast University. Go Eagles in Fort Myers, Florida. And it was a brand new school at the time, which was so exciting. And we had a really small class. We had 19 people in our OT class, which was amazing. And we all just moved around together in this herd of OTs. And we were like kind of a sorority in itself. But we had 2 guys, which was exciting because that was more than many other classes did. And I loved my time there. And so I actually have a bachelor's in OT. So I graduated in 2005, and I was the last graduating class of bachelors for the state of Florida. Mm-hmm. And so now, of course, it's a master's entry level. And then I had the option, they were offering us the option of staying 1 more year to earn our master's. And I declined that because my then fiance was moving out to California. And so now I'm going to go on this grand adventure. So I had some really amazing internships. My level 2 internships were kind of incredible. One was in DC, and it was just amazing. I had to do lobbying and all sorts of crazy stuff. And then moved out to California. And so I started working there. And then after working for a couple of years, I decided I want to go back to school for a master's. So I went back for a master's in gerontology. So I have that as well. And that I got in 2010. So I've been in OT since 2005.
Wow. That is exciting. I love it. Yeah, we do have a lot of similarities. So if you guys haven't listened to Miri interviewing me about my own OT journey and leadership, check out that episode. So yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities in some of our stories of, falling into OT, or a family member inspired you, or, because a lot of people don't know what it is anyway, but I'm so glad I found it.
Yeah, I do. I feel like I kind of lucked out because, when you're in high school, it's hard to pick the career that you're going to stick with for the rest of your life. And then you invest all of this time and money into the education, and then you feel like you need to continue with it. And it changes. You change as a person, you shift. And I feel like I kind of lucked out with OT because it is so flexible, and you're really able to dig into exactly what you want to do in any sort of population that's out there. So I feel very fortunate to have found it.
Yeah, me too, definitely. So today we're going to be talking about, cross-discipline collaboration. So why are you interested in this, and why do you feel like it's an important topic?
Sure. So I was trying to find the root of my interest in cross-discipline collaboration. And I don't know how far back it goes, but I know that in my OT school, they were big into community outreach. And so this, I think, was the first time that it was strongly impressed upon us that this is really important. So we had some really interesting internships, and they had this broad reach within the community. And perhaps because it was a new school and a new program, they weren't kind of stuck in their ways. They didn't have their set fieldwork supervisors yet. They had this broad reach. And so we got to do some really cool stuff. And I think taking that, learning that lesson in OT school and then moving to a new state, one of the very first things I did when I got my first job at a skilled nursing facility is I looked outside of the building. What is out here in the community? Who can I collaborate with? Who can I outreach to? And it wasn't inside the building, it wasn't just them. Of course, I would work with the PTs and the speech therapists and the nurses and whoever else, but I had this constant broad reach, outward looking, and who is doing what? Because you know what? At some point, these people are going to go home. That's our goal. And then what supports do they need in the community? What is out there? And so not just looking at the home health that they're going to get next, but who else can help support them? Who else is out there doing really interesting things? And then, so from that, when I was in California, I did a lot of volunteering. Rebuilding Together is a wonderful organization to volunteer with if you're an OT. And then you find these little small nonprofits that are in your area. They're everywhere out there. And all you have to do is look. And they're usually really excited to work with someone like us.
If people aren't familiar with that organization, do you want to just give a little background of what it is?
Sure. So Rebuilding Together is a national nonprofit organization that does home modifications for people with disabilities who are low income. So you know how most people have heard of Habitat for Humanity, and they build houses. Rebuilding Together remodels houses. And so it's a perfect collaboration for OTs who are interested in home modifications. So you can volunteer your expertise. You're not just a person with a paintbrush. You go in as a professional and you say, okay, so I ended up working with them for so long that I got to be their kind of expert consultant. So they would call me in on really difficult cases, someone with oxygen, someone with COPD, someone with a stroke. And it's beyond just a grab bar installation. What does this person need? And what are our capabilities as the organization to be able to provide that? Do we need to look out in the community abroad for someone to be able to do a roll-in shower? Is that what this person needs? And I learned so much. And it was just this beautiful collaboration. And by the time I was transitioning out of that organization into I ended up doing some adjunct teaching at a university in California. There was this other professor who was coming in, and she brought a gaggle of students with her. And so it was this wonderful collaboration too. Like, they came in and had a bunch of OT students, and then I was moving on to a university quite farther north. So I wasn't involved with that rebuilding together anymore. But it was, there's a chapter in your area, I'm sure of it, wherever you're listening to this in the US. So it's a beautiful collaboration, and AOTA and Rebuilding Together had a long time collaboration too. So that's so it's this known partnership.
Wow, that does sound amazing. I need to look into that a little bit more. I don't know about rural Colorado, but they are nationally, huh?
They are nationally, and if they're not in rural Colorado, there's going to be something in your area, because this is a gap. It's a service gap. It's a major service gap. And if you don't find something in your area, I mean, here's the entrepreneur in me, maybe start something.
You know, I am a little entrepreneur, but gosh almighty, I don't know if I could get anything else.
I'm just put more on your plate. Yeah.
No, but I do. I love that kind of stuff. So how would you define, like, what cross-discipline collaboration is? And, like, I'm sure it kind of looks a little bit differently, like you were saying about, if you're working clinically, or if you're looking at from like a business perspective, or just like from your community. How do you feel like that looks?
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely going to look different in my perspective based on what your setting is. And I think when I started out, I did have this natural tendency to look outside just to see what was in my community. But I needed to do cross-discipline collaboration just to be able to survive as my first year as an OT in a skilled nursing facility that was not a good one. It was not good. And so I leaned heavily on my other rehab professionals. And so we had this really tight relationship, and it was great. So I would do a lot of, because this nursing facility was, we had a lot of people who were not going home in this facility. And it was challenging. It was really emotionally and physically draining to go to work there every day. And it was one of those facilities where you walk in the door and you smell C. diff. I still smell it, It was one of those facilities. So we would lean really heavily on each other, partly because we needed two people to do these transfers, and we needed to get these people out of bed, and we needed to do something with them, or they were just getting bed sores in their beds all the time. And then it's, okay, so we're getting them out of bed for this amount of time. We're setting up an alert system so that they can call the nurses if they needed to. But if the nurses aren't buying into it, then nothing is gonna change. And so we would do, bring in food for the nurses, and we would really encourage the nurses to be part of our treatment. And we would go to them, and they would come to us. And it's a funny little line that happens in the rehab room where the nurses don't come in and we don't go out very often.
Yeah.
And it's been like this in every facility that I've worked in. And perhaps it's, I don't know if it's because I've worked with contract therapy companies. So I haven't been employed by the nursing home, but it's by a contract therapy company. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So perhaps it's because of that. I'm not really sure. But I think in every industry, people have a tendency to be in their silos. We talk to either only the OTs, or we talk to only the rehab professionals. And now in my world, like, the architects talk to the architects, and the interior designers talk to the interior designers. And we don't have bridges from the silos. And I think it's just natural. And so what I find so much value in making the bridges. And so that's what I'm feeling called to do. So that's what I continue to do. But back to your question about what collaboration looks like then it was survival. And I needed to really heavily rely on my therapy colleagues. And then once we figured out we needed to bring the nurses in, then things started to really change. And I remember, if you don't mind, can I tell a story?
Heck yeah, I love stories.
There's two that just come to mind right away. One of them was this woman who had a stroke, and she wasn't going home. And so that was not our goal, but she was very cognitively intact, but her body was really kind of crumbling. And I found out one day she wanted to sew. She loved sewing. And I ended up bringing in my sewing machine from home and setting it up on top of her bedside table, the tray that comes over the bed, and ended up setting it up. And we got it so that she could push the pedal with her elbow and run the fabric through. And she would make these little things. And my sewing machine was ancient and really heavy, so I needed to be in there with her. But we were able to collaborate with the nurses who found a smaller, lighter sewing machine for her, so she was able to do things on her own. And it was this bringing in the nurses, seeing that this is really valuable, and seeing that they can have this spark and intention and really impact the life of this person as well. And it just takes one. It just takes one nurse. It takes one patient. It takes one experience for the mindset to shift and say, yeah, I can really have a big impact. And it's really exciting.
Oh, I love that. Well, and it's just like what their love as a patient, what their love is. But I think what happens, I mean, I've worked in a lot of facilities as well. I think what happens is everybody, what your profession does, and you kind of get in the groove of what you need to do. You have a job, you have your documentation, everyone's busy. We are all busy in but it does take that little bit of extra effort to build that rapport and, be able to collaborate with them. And then you can build that trust. And sometimes it's that bridging that trust, saying like, okay, they know, I'm respecting you as a professional. You're respecting me as a professional. We each have our roles, and we still may not completely understand what each other does, but like our common goal is like the patient. And so I know sometimes it's so much easier said than done, but like you said, I think sometimes it's just making that little bit of extra effort. Let it be bringing in food or, having a reason to talk to other people on your team besides complaining or needing something from each other, because I think that's what we feel like you're doing. Because you're like, I need an order. I need this. They need pain meds. You're talking to nurses, or PT. You're like, I need this. I need, it's just like you feel like you need something from them in order to get your job done. But it's trying to look at it from a different perspective and be like, how can we help each other in order to accomplish this goal?
Yes.
So
yes, and start with gratitude. I think. Having that as kind of a mantra running through your head, I think will help to guide you with what the right thing to do is in that situation. And it start with gratitude. What are you grateful for in your day? I'm waking up in the morning and I'm really grateful that I get to have coffee soon, whatever it is that you're really grateful for. But then going into work and looking at this person and saying, okay, this person's driving me crazy right now, but what am I grateful for? There's always something to be grateful for. And I think that just opens up a little space in your chest, and it makes room for kindness and appreciation. And then that can really lead to a wonderful long-term collaboration.
Yeah. And I mean, in general, there's always going to be, you're never going to really lose when you have those collaborative relationships. I'm trying to think if there would be a scenario where this would not be a good situation. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there's always it doesn't matter if it's like I said, with your core group of coworkers or reaching out to other healthcare professionals or businesses or, if we're trying to accomplish this goal, I just don't really see how it can be a negative. But why do you think we struggle with this? Like, why is this such a hard concept? I've been guilty of it as well. Like you just go in there, do your thing. Like why is that? Is it human nature? I don't know. I'm just kind of pondering that one.
And I'll start out by saying I don't know. So I don't
right,
know.
Yeah, exactly. Good
I
point.
can definitely speculate. So I found this really interesting research article recently, and I have it in front of me, so please pardon the sound of paper flipping, but it's called With Whom Do Researchers Collaborate and Why? And this is very heavy into the academic world, but I thought it was really interesting because I felt like perhaps this can provide some insights, because I have that question too. Why does this happen? I like to look I'm kind of a history nerd, and I just love to look back into our history of things. How did this become the way it is? Why do you think this is like this? And in the research world, it's interesting because the way they have their reward structure in place, it rewards collaborating only within your discipline. So there's publication reward. So in academics, people, you have an expectation of publications, and you are published more and when you only collaborate within your discipline. And so monodisciplinary research is cited more often. So if OTs are researching with OTs, then other OTs are going to be citing that research more often. And because, and this is my speculation as to why, is perhaps because as an OT, if we're looking at what best practices for OTs are, if they're collaborating with a PT, we might think, okay, that's not for us. I want OT specific stuff. And perhaps that's why. That's my speculation. The other interesting thing that came out of this article was that people who are desiring a career advancement seek international collaboration. So international collaboration in the academic world, at least, is looked very highly upon, whereas local or cross-disciplinary collaboration within your same country is not as highly favored. So that was another really interesting, and I don't know why for that. If you have any guesses, that would be interesting to hear. Okay, and then the other thing is, so if the problem is hard enough, then you'll see the cross-discipline collaboration. So if someone can't figure it out on their own, then that's when they're going to reach out to other people. And if, so the times, at least from this article, when people are reaching out, and I felt like this was really similar to what perhaps my trajectory is too, at the very beginning of your career, you're reaching out more because you need help. You need not only just help in the, in the rehab gym, but perhaps you might want some career advancement. You have a goal of getting somewhere, and how can I get to that goal? How can I make that goal? And so you need help. And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm cruising. I know my stuff. I got this. Totally good. And then you're just cruising, and then you don't reach out. And then I think that's the kind of the dangerous part, though, is that when we feel we have it. And I think that what I'm learning as a new entrepreneur too, it's all about who you know and your relationships. And these relationships are so incredibly valuable, not just to help you towards your goal of whatever you're doing, but these people that you're talking with, every single conversation I've ever had has been so valuable in some sense, because if nothing else, it's helping me learn the way that another person thinks and hearing their ideas and their voice. Because at the very core of it, there's human nature, and that we all just want to be heard. We want to be heard. And there's such value in it. Okay, so I'm going back to my list. You have my papers again. Okay, this is the other really interesting part, is that lack of collaboration is impacted by an individual's quality of work. And I put that in air quotes because that's what it was in the paper. But if two researchers can agree on the quality of work, they're more likely to collaborate, which makes a lot of sense. So if I'm saying I've got high standards for my stuff and I see you doing a Band-Aid approach and just slapping stuff together, I don't want to work with you. So we may be in the same profession, but you are going to impact my professional quality, and I have high standards for myself. Not you, Mandy, but I'm saying pointing in the other direction, someone else. But so that I think affects the cross-discipline collaboration as well, but also interdisciplinary collaboration. Okay, so this is the other interesting part. They're all interesting parts. I think I keep saying that a lot. But the funding agencies now are encouraging more multidiscipline university research. So where's the money come from? So if the funder is saying, hey, I want you to do a cross-disciplinary study on this, then they're going to do a cross-disciplinary study. So knowing that, as people who are industry professionals like us, who are wanting to collaborate with universities, if we just go to, Joe Schmo researcher and say, hey, I would love to work with you, they're probably going to turn us down. But if we go to a university research center, university industry partnerships, centers of excellence, and industry interdisciplinary research collaboration, these are all keywords to look for if you're doing a search in your area. They are much more likely to want to collaborate with industry professionals like us. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's valuable,
It's
right?
funny.
It's like,
it's
no,
very valuable.
yeah. So I think this is the history geek in me, knowing the background of this. So why are people not wanting to collaborate? At least this is very academic specific. And so why in academia are people not wanting to collaborate? And if we know why, not surprisingly, it's money related or prestige. It's not surprising at all. But knowing that, okay, what can we do about it if we do want to collaborate with these people? And so if you write them an email and say, hey, I'd love to collaborate, it's not you. They're not dissing you, or they're not responding because of you. It's because what they get out of it isn't high enough. They have their sights set on something else.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's just knowing that. Yeah.
Gosh, what's funny is I'm sitting here pausing and I'm thinking, and I'm one of those people that like sometimes doesn't respond as I'm processing the whole thing. And I'm just sitting here like, just kind of like, okay, that is so much amazing information, because I think it really kind of explains, it gives some insight, I guess, into how and why, and like you said, the history of it. So gosh, yeah. I can see how that works, because I'm the exact same way. I mean, right? I think it's human nature. Like you were saying, if you feel like you have high standards for yourself and whatever it may be, and then someone else is doing it kind of
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say half-ass, but half-assing it. Yes. Then you don't want to be associated, or you don't want to, and they may want to collaborate with you because they actually see you as, quote, a step up and saying like, I want to be like them. And you're like, well, but you're not doing your job. And so it's really hard to collaborate with those, with those type of people, but you can actually, but also that kind of maybe hinders some opportunities and perspectives and things. You're limiting yourself a bit sometimes as well. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So how do you think we can increase that collaboration? What are some ways that we can move forward and work towards this?
Okay, well, I'll tell you what I've done.
Yes, I want to hear it
because I can speak to that. I don't know how we use the broad we, but I'll tell you what I did. So when I was working clinically, I've worked in skilled nursing facilities and home care, and my goal ultimately was to get into home care, and that's where I wanted to be. But in my area, you had to work for at least 2 years in more of a traditional setting, because they didn't want a new grad roaming around by themselves throughout the city, which I get that. I understand that. Yeah. So my goal was to work in skilled nursing facilities until I could get to that point where I could work in home care, and that's exactly what I did. And when I was working in home care, it's a lonely world out there. You don't get much does any sort of collaboration. Like, you might get lucky and you get the electrician at the house at the same time. You're like, hey, another. Anyway, so I loved working with the social workers. They were one of my absolute favorite people to work with. And at this time, when I was working in home care, I was also going back to school part-time for my master's in gerontology. So which gerontology is kind of the social science of aging, social studies of aging. And we had all these theories of aging. And so I could speak the language of the social workers, which was so fun for me at the time. So I loved doing visits at the same time with the social worker. And I still remember this one where I don't remember if I was there intentionally or just kind of accidentally happened that my appointment aligned with hers, but she was doing a mediation session with the family and the client. And of course, she's kind of being, this strong advocate for the client, and then the adult children are saying this isn't, there's something going on. And I witnessed this beautiful mediation session, and that is something that I would not have been exposed to otherwise, because this is not within our realm of OT to do mediation. But it was fascinating and beautiful, and she was so skilled, and I learned so much. And I'm not a mediator now. This is not a skill that I have in my handbag, but I feel like a better person for witnessing that. And the compassion and the empathy that she showed for these people. And it was just the idea of witnessing something beautiful. And it was this, a discipline very different than OT. And I think, so if people are working in home care, I strongly suggest doing cross-discipline visits. It's easy to do it with the PT because you might have a big goal for that visit and you're able to do that. But go out with the social worker, go out with the case manager, because these are really valuable. And I'm not sure about your organizations, if you guys get together often to have care meetings. For our organization, we did not. We did not have those. Ours was a home care and hospice. And I loved working with hospice when I could. It wasn't often, but hospice would have these 4-hour long care meetings where they would just talk. I mean, that was a different world over there, in the same building, but it's just totally different world. So, and that's the other thing. If in your organization you have some sort of different arm, whether it's this memory care unit that you're not in often, or if it is hospice, home-based or facility-based, try to get in there. Try to do either just some observation hours, because I guarantee you're going to learn something either about your facility or about yourself, and it might start unlocking things. And all we can do is really try to follow these threads of interest, and it's funny, you take the thread and you can look back in your life and where did this come from, or follow it forward just with curiosity and see where it goes. But doing these cross-disciplinary collaborations, it can really help you find your way too.
Yeah, no, exactly. You're exactly right. I think, I can think of when I did home health, I did home health right out of school, which that's a whole podcast on its own. But I was the same way. I was like grasping and, trying to figure out, I was in a new town, so I didn't know any of the resources at all. I was a new grad, and, I'm working in home care, which, like you said, is very, very independent. And in particular, I would say, like, I had a really good relationship with one of the social workers as well. And then we had a local DME provider that was he was amazing. Mm-hmm. And he was so knowledgeable. And I was just kind of floundering around. I'm like, I know what I kind of need. And and he was just there to help me. And then it turned into like such a good collaborative relationship. Like, he would have somebody that, needed a referral, and he would refer to, our, home care organization, because he, had that relationship and he trusted us and he knew they would be taken care of. And, it just turns into this really wonderful relationship, professional relationship, where you trust the other people, or we each have an understanding of what our strengths and limitations are. And we can just, not only provide amazing care for your patients, but also like, I feel like that's how healthcare should work. And it doesn't always, but it definitely helps. And like, you were talking about, like, with social worker, I can think of an example of a elderly lady that I was in there for, but she had some kind of sketchy guy living with her. Mm-hmm. And, she was like, I think in her 90s, and he was, not even joking, probably 30 something. I want to say maybe, honestly, he was homeless, but I'm not quite sure. And I just had this feeling he was supposed to be, quote, taking care of her, but he wasn't family. And I always got a really crazy vibe. And, nothing really happened, but, it's having those conversations with the social worker that they could go in. And that's something that we should do anyway. But I think it was just like one of those situations where you can see where these other disciplines or, professionals really shine in knowing my own limitations, like in that specific situation. And then, using them as a resource and trusting it as a resource. Because I think sometimes that we don't always refer when we should. Yeah. We don't know everything. I mean, gosh almighty, I don't know everything. And like, I need my team. I need other professionals. I need other organizations. I need people to, in order to be the best that I can be. So gosh, collaboration is so, so important.
Yeah. And as you're talking too, I had this, kind of memories bubbling back up from my time in home care, and people want to help.
Yeah.
People want to help. And so as a new grad or a relatively new practitioner, just remember that people want to help. Just like if someone came to you and said, hey, will you help me with this? You have no doubt in your mind you're going to help this person. Of course you are. Mm-hmm. That's how people feel about you. Mm-hmm. So reach out. And people want to help, and people are kind, and people might be frazzled and overworked, but
they're still going to do it.
They're still going to do it. Yeah.
I know. So why do you think it's vital? I mean, I know, and I just gave a couple examples, like I feel like it's vital. From your kind of experience, even like from, starting an OT business. Why do you think that collaboration is so vital?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. When I look back into being a new grad, I didn't know that this was vital. It just felt like something I needed to do. I wasn't doing it with any sort of purpose. It was like, I enjoy this and I see a lot of benefit from it. And so I just kept doing it. Now, as a business owner, it is so vital.
Yeah.
and it, and it's this tangible. So I'm constantly reaching out to people, and especially, like the new grad who doesn't know much. I'm a new business owner who doesn't know much about business, and I'm figuring it out. And so who do I reach out to? I've got a business mentor, which is really helpful. So people way outside of my industry like that are extremely helpful. And it's funny because the collaborations come from all over the place. And this is one of my favorite stories. We have a little yoga studio in my town that I love and that I go to often. And there was my yoga mat neighbor one day. She gave me this flyer. She's like, "Oh, I just did this song for, I think it was Valentine's Day, and you can take a picture with your phone." I was like, "What is this thing?" And so I took a picture with my phone and started playing the song. It was like magic. But then I went on her website later, and she had worked on The Golden Girls, which was my favorite show of all time. And so I just sent her an email. I said, "I don't know what you do, but I would love to learn more. Can we have coffee one day?" We met for coffee. Turns out she helps people with podcasts.
Oh my God.
I'm starting a podcast. So she's like constantly emailing me all of these great advice, like just detailed stuff that I need to do. And I would never have known that if I didn't reach out to her from her website, just with pure curiosity. What do you do? I would love to learn more. And I think right now, that's where it comes from, is just this curiosity. And it's funny, like I look back at my childhood and I wasn't a curious kid. I was a really shy kid. Like I wouldn't even order my food at a restaurant. I was so shy, and I wouldn't ask questions. And I'm at this point in my life where I feel like I'm kind of making up for that. So I'm asking all of the questions, and I have this kind of insatiable curiosity about all of these things. And for me, it's following the thread. Let me go along this thread of interest. And for me, it's the built environment. How did we get to the way we are? Why are the outlets at the height that they are? How did this happen? Why is the house built like this? Why are infrastructures like this? Let me follow these threads of curiosity. And if you follow curiosity, it's never going to lead you astray.
Oh my gosh. Such wise words of wisdom, Nichole. Because what's funny is that is such a quality that I have worked on developing. I still struggle with it. Like I'm kind of, I'm on a podcast, I do all these things, but what's really funny is I'm kind of like an outgoing introvert. Like I'm one of those people, you go into a crowd, I like to observe. I like to get a good feel of what's everybody doing. I need to see, give it a good scan, give it a good feel, and then I can jump in. But it's so funny because my husband always he always kind of laughs at it because he's just he's a confident guy. He just goes in, and not that I'm not confident, but I like to get a good feel. And so sometimes I challenge myself to sometimes you just need to kind of jump in. And like you said, have a conversation with your yoga mat partner or whatever. And that's not me, but I've been really working on that because you do not know who you are going to meet. And it is, and those people, not even from a business standpoint, but just even a personal, relationship or connections or what do you have to lose? But I don't know if it's the little bit or the perfectionistic qualities in my body that are afraid of rejection or whatever it is. But it's that whole thing. I love your curiosity. And it's just oh man, that honestly challenges me to I totally need to do that more.
Okay, so it is not always easy to reach out and to do these things. So I definitely don't want to make it sound like this is something that is no problem for me. And I definitely struggle with this too, because I have an inner critic in my head that constantly tells me that I shouldn't be doing this, or who are you to be doing this or talking to them or reaching out or blah, 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 blah. And I've done a lot of work in these last, actually a couple of years to try to quiet that inner critic and prove that it's wrong. young. So that's part of my own kind of backstory of how I have gotten here. But I want to share with your listeners that this is not easy, and you will have that inner critic bubble up. And perhaps you reach out by email and someone never writes you back. You just get crickets. And, you start thinking, oh, well, what is it? What is it? What is it? And it's not you. And I think that reaching out and being able to do that takes a lot of courage. And that is something that in my mind deserves a reward, like a bar of chocolate. So go get yourself a fancy bar of chocolate if you reach out to someone, because I think that is totally chocolate bar worthy. So the fancier, the better. So it's just like, potty training my kid. I had some chocolate incentives. It's like that too. You're retraining this because this is something, if you want to do it, and not saying that everyone should, this isn't for everyone, but if you want to do it, then I think there's so much value in it. And so it's really interesting now. Reaching out looks very, very different than reaching out when I was a clinical OT. So now starting my business, I'm reaching out to a broad spectrum of people, primarily people who are working with aging in place. So that's my topic. And who else is touching this? So I'm talking with architects, I'm talking with interior designers, and trying to follow my own advice, because I knew we were going to record this morning. This morning, I emailed someone who's doing an exhibit at a museum, and I was like, how did you get to where you are? What are you doing? I'd love to talk to you. So I had no idea if she's going to respond to me, but I was like, let me put my money where my mouth is. But this is something I'm doing not daily, but at least one a week. I'm sending out an email to someone who I don't know, who I would love to learn more about. And it's really purely curiosity. Tell me more about your work. It sounds fascinating. And I found that Sunday afternoon seems to be a really good time to send emails. I found that accidentally, because that is the sliver of time that I have to work on the weekend. When my husband and son are playing a game or going on a walk or something like that together, he gives me an hour to do a couple of emails on Sunday afternoon. And so that's what I do. Send out an email. And sometimes it takes me a whole hour to craft one email, and that's just what it is, and I get it out. But turns out that's a really good time to respond, because people get their email on their phone, even if it's their work email, and they get it before the huge deluge of emails come in on Monday morning. And oftentimes I'll get a response right after I send it on Sunday afternoon, and it surprises me every time. But it's neat.
Yeah. There's a whole science of when people open emails, for sure, as well.
Oh, yeah, I don't know that. And I see, now I have curiosity about that. Now I want to go figure that out.
Oh, we need to have a conversation. Yeah. A lot of people get tons of emails on Monday. And so anyway, but yeah, I think, just reaching out, like you said, and putting yourself out there a little bit and just going with it. I mean, what do you have to lose? So what are some tips, or do you have any tips for people, like other tips to kind of get going on this? If it's something people are like, I should be doing more of this, how do I do that? What does that look like?
Well, the Sunday afternoon thing was something I accidentally found. And so that's one. But I really want people to kind of pause and think. And so why are you reaching out to someone, and what are you wanting? Where is your curiosity taking you? And I would love for people to consider, not just professionally, but really what has that fire in your heart? Are you wanting to learn more about oil painting? Do you have someone that you really admire? Maybe reaching out to them and saying, how did you learn? I love this technique that you do. How did you learn about that? And it could blossom into a friendship, and you never know where this is going to go, but reaching out with an open mind and an open heart, I think, is all that you can do. And I have about a 50% response rate. So it's, which I thought was pretty good. I was expecting a 30% response rate. So I was pretty pleased with the 50%. So know that too. Like, when you're reaching out to someone, you might get nothing, or you might get I really can't talk right now, or you might get a no thanks. And all of that is okay. And just keep going and just keep following those. So I think my biggest tip would be to pause and reflect. So what do you want to learn? What are you curious about? And then going from there.
Go from there. Yep, totally. So if, we're talking about tips, we've talked about all sorts of things like definition of what is cross-discipline collaboration, what can it look like from, professionally and clinically and from a business standpoint? And you were talking about how this is one of your own challenges. And so you talk a little bit about your entrepreneurship and your new business and a little bit about aging in place. Why don't you talk about like what your business is and what you're doing with that?
Sure. Oh gosh, thanks. I would love to. So I consider myself a universal design strategist. So I work with homeowners. I would love to work with cities. I haven't worked with cities yet, but I work with corporations who are wanting to infuse accessibility into their place. So my business is called Home and Place Project. And I'm really, ultimately, I'm wanting to be an education resource for people who are interested in the built environment. So accessibility in the built environment. And so because of that, I'm reaching out and learning about architecture theories. And I've digging into books and digging into these other theories of place that isn't something that's normally in our wheelhouse of occupational therapy. And it's been really interesting. I'm also starting a podcast called Home and Place Podcast, where my whole purpose is to have this cross-disciplinary conversation about aging and about place. And so who are these people who are affecting it? So I'm talking with architects about the importance of access to nature and how to get people outside and why is this good? Let's look at the benefits. It reduces pain, it increases socialization, it reduces blood pressure. And how to get people outside, and especially in the older adults, how to get older adults outside. And it's just fascinating how the architects are changing the built environment to get people outside more. So for example, if people are able to preview the outdoors before actually going outside, they're more likely to go outside. And that means if you have a glass door, if you're able to see through it, people are more likely to go outside. It's just these simple things. So you think, okay, how can we translate to the house too? Perhaps putting a storm door on. In Colorado, we have storm doors, which are glass doors that you can still see out, or a screen door, having just some way to be able to see the outside. So it's really, really fascinating. But that's what I'm doing with the podcast. I'm creating this cross-discipline conversation all about aging in place.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. When is it going live? Do you have a timeline? Or is this still a work in progress?
It is definitely a work in progress still. So I keep saying early 2018, which we are definitely in that realm of early 2018 right now. So that's my goal, is early this year. And if people want to get on the mailing list, so you can get updates for when it does launch, you can go to my website, homeandplacepodcast.com, and you can just put in your email address, and I will never spam. It'll just be reminders for the podcast.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm excited. Well, and I think you said, it's that collaboration and working with other disciplines, how much we can learn. I mean, as somebody who's not a, aging in place specialist, but we still do a lot of home modifications and make lots of recommendations. Mm-hmm. It's nice to have that insight from other disciplines and different professionals. Like, I think how much we can learn from each other is
absolutely. Yeah, I feel like I kind of started this because I don't know what I don't know. And
that's exactly right.
Yeah, it's like I don't even know the questions to ask, but I know that this is the topic that makes my heart sing. So let me figure it out. And that's what I'm doing. And I've been doing this on my own for the last year or so, reading books and And it kind of struck me like, oh, what if I put it out there? Wonder if other people would be interested in this too. And it turns out they are, because I haven't even launched yet. And I've been getting so many emails, and a lot of people are really interested in this. And I've just started to put feelers out there. So it's really exciting. So if you don't mind, I would love if your listeners had suggestions for me, if there's something that they wanted to hear about, or if they know of a person who might be a really good fit for this, reach out on my website and send me an email. That would be awesome.
Yeah. Reach out because knowledge is power. Mm-hmm. For sure. So what would you say are some, just kind of wrapping things up, if people listening to this whole conversation, which I love the stories and I love the meaty info that we've been able to talk about today, what would you like them to take away?
Yes, I have a challenge for your listeners.
Yeah.
I challenge your listeners to pause, look inside. What is that fire for you? What is that thread of interest? And then reach out, find someone and reach out to them. So an email on Sunday afternoon or a message on Instagram or Facebook, and just make one connection, because sometimes the first one is the hardest. And you never know what'll happen. Or talk to your yoga mat neighbor.
Or bring food to your nurses.
Totally bring food. Always bring food to your nurses.
You gotta get in somehow.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So make that first step. That's my challenge.
Perfect.
And then
Everyone
so I would love, oh my gosh, this would be amazing. So make that first step and then let me know. So find me on Instagram, Home in Place. I'm at Home in Place, and let me know what you did and let me know what happened. I would love that.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, Nichole, for all your little nuggets of wisdom and challenging us. I think it's such an important thing that we do need to be challenged professionally and personally. How are we supposed to grow? I mean, that's kind of my take on it, but I'm just very excited you were able to join me today. And everybody check out Nichole. She's on Instagram. That's how I found her. And be sure to kind of get in on her podcast when it comes out this year. homeinplacepodcast.com. I'm really excited to hear that because I love that cross-discipline collaboration. So thanks again.
Thank you so much. This was a true delight. Thank you, Mandy.
Thanks, everyone. And thanks, everyone, for listening. So until next time.
If you are an occupational therapy practitioner that enjoyed today's podcast, I invite you to check out the Learning Lab at seniorsflourish.com/Learning Lab. The Learning Lab is the essential resource for OT practitioners working with older adults looking for more treatment ideas, support, and resources to be the best they can be. So whether you're struggling to find evidence-based treatment ideas, you don't have time to research for resources or patient diagnoses, or are even looking for ways to earn more professional development units, then the Learning Lab can help you become a more effective and efficient practitioner. With weekly educational videos, a huge resource and handout list, a bi-monthly journal club where you can earn professional development units, a supportive community forum, and even some exclusive member-only bonuses, the Learning Lab is the perfect place to help you be the best OT practitioner you can be. It's like having your own OT help desk. So check it out at seniorsflourish.com/Learning Lab. Thanks for listening.